The air in the observation chamber was sterile, recycled, and thick with profound, scaly disappointment. Scholar Tikar Clarn of the Xylos consensus adjusted his frill in agitation. The delicate membranes flushed a dull gray of disillusionment. On the holographic display before him, Subject Gamma, designated David, was, once again, engaging in bafflingly inefficient behavior. He was throwing a small, red spherical fruit at a distant wall. Again and again. The data set is conclusive. Clarn hummed his assistant, Plix. The human is nonsensical. Observe. His caloric intake is high. His energy expenditure is prodigious for his muscle density, and he allocates significant time to this repetitive lobbing. He does not consume the fruit. He does not worship it. He merely wishes to see it strike the wall. Plix's antennae quivered in sympathy. The other species in the sector, the Veln with their hydraulic tendon strength, the Gortha with their crushing bulk, their superiority was logical. This humanity, fuck yeah, filed a consensus intercepted from their datanet, must be propaganda, a psychological bluff. Clarn recalled the file. It was a chaotic collection of narratives, each highlighting a different, improbable human trait. Resilience to toxins, survival in vacuum, bizarre cooperation patterns. It was deemed fictional bravado. Their mission was to verify before the Xylos Armada decided whether to annex Earth as a client species, or simply bypass it as irrelevant. And David, the captured specimen, was their key. So far, he'd been underwhelming. He lacked natural armor. His bite force was pathetic. He was disturbingly fragile. Yet, the interesting fact subfile had fixated on something called the Quaternary Extinction Event and peculiar note. Homo sapiens is the only surviving terrestrial species whose primary evolutionary predation strategy involved killing at a distance by accelerating projectiles with a whipping motion of a leveraged limb. It was jargon, meaningless. Enough of this fruit, Clarn decided, his frill hardening with resolve. Initiate Phase 2, Threat Assessment. Deploy the Gladiator droid. Level 1. In David's containment cell, the far wall shimmered. The red fruit David had just thwacked against it, leaving a juicy stain. He sighed, picking up another. Then he froze. A Xylos Gladiator droid, a sleek, chromium biped with articulated force blades for arms, phased into existence. It emitted a low, threatening whine. David slowly placed the fruit on the floor. In the observation chamber, Clarn leaned forward. Now we will see their famed fight or flight. Note the physiological fear responses. Likely, he will cower or make a futile charge. The droid lunged, a blur of metallic motion. David did not cower. He did not charge. He took 2 quick steps to the side, his foot hooking the discarded red fruit. It rolled. He didn't seem to notice. His eyes were on the droid, but his body was coiling away Clarn had not catalogued. A slight twist of the hips, a raising of the left arm, a drawing back of the right. What is he doing? Plix buzzed. He has no weapon. His stance is unstable, off balance. The droid closed in, force blade raised for a non-lethal, but debilitating strike to David's leg. David's right arm came forward. Not a punch. It was a blur of motion that started in his planted foot, spiraled up through his rotating torso, snapped across his chest, and unleashed from his fingers in a whip-crack termination. Thwomp. The sound was wet, dense, utterly final. The Gladiator droid stopped. Its optical sensor, a reinforced polymer dome on its chest, was gone. In its place was a crater of shattered composites and sparking wiring. Oozing from the center of the wreckage was the pulped remains of the red fruit. The droid teetered and fell backward with a heavy crash. Silence, broken only by the sizzle of severed circuits. David stood, shaking out his hand. "Waste of a good apple," he muttered. In the observation chamber, the silence was absolute. Clarn's frill was plastered flat against his skull in pure, undiluted shock. Plix's data slate clattered to the floor. "Replay," Clarn finally whispered. "Extreme slow motion. Analyze." The hologram rewound. At 1/10,000 speed, the miracle unfolded. They saw the intricate ballet, the ground force generation, the sequential engagement of muscle groups from leg to core, back to shoulder, a kinetic chain of terrifying efficiency. They saw the arm, moving not as a rigid lever, but as a self-cocking sling. The wrist, the final, devastating flick that imparted a spin. The analysis software finally spooled a result. Its neutral tone ludicrous against the data. Projectile, organic sphere, Pomaceae family. Mass, 0.15 kilograms. Initial velocity, 42 meters/second. Energy transfer, 132 joules. Impact force, approximately 3,500 newtons. Observation, Strike utilized a biomechanical principle termed whiplash kinetics. No known species in consensus records possesses this neuromuscular architecture. Clarn stared at the data. He thought of the interesting fact. Killing at a distance. A whipping motion of a leveraged limb. It wasn't jargon. It was a technical manual. For this, David had just turned a piece of fruit, a snack, into an armor-piercing, range kinetic kill shot. With his body. Plix, Clarn said, his voice hollow. Access the HFY file again. Cross-reference with this throwing action. The file bloomed. Context he dismissed as myth now glared with horrifying plausibility. Fact. A human child can be taught to accurately hit a target with a rock from 15 meters. Fact. The human shoulder joint is the most versatile and torque-efficient throwing mechanism in any recorded biome. Fact. This ability is theorized to have led to the extinction of Earth's megafauna. Not with claws, not with teeth, with thrown rocks and spears. We hunted the giants to death from a safe distance before we invented the wheel. Clarn looked back at the cell. David was now standing over the disabled droid, prying off a small, sharp piece of plating. He tested its weight, flipping it in his hand, his eyes scanning the walls of his cell with a calm, calculating look. He wasn't looking for escape. He was looking for ammunition. The file, it's not fiction, Clarn breathed, understanding dawning like a supernova. It's a warning. Their planet is a graveyard of giants they killed by throwing things at them. Their history is not one of evolving to fight their predators. It is one of evolving to execute anything that threatened them from beyond its reach. He watched as David, with casual practice flick of his new sharpened piece of metal, sent it zipping across the room. It embedded itself in the wall with a thunk, exactly where the apple had struck earlier. A targeting test. They don't just make weapons, Clarn said, a cold dread seeping into his carapace. Their bodies are weapons. Their entire civilization is built on the principle of the leveraged, accelerated projectile. From a rock, to a spear, to a bullet, to a missile. It's the same primal motion amplified. He turned to Plix, his frill now a pale, fearful white. Send a priority, absolute clearance message to the Armada Command. Message reads, cancel all annexation protocols for Sol System. Repeat cancel. Recommend classification. Forbidden Garden. Do not approach. Do not provoke. The dominant species does not fight. They throw, and they have had 10,000 years of practice. As the message whooshed away at light speed, Clarn took one last look at David. The human had gathered a small pile of suitable objects, a food tray, a piece of piping, the droid other force blade. He was calmly, methodically, preparing his environment. For the first time, Scholar Tikar Clarn understood the true meaning of those three simple, brutal letters. HFY. It wasn't a boast. It was a simple, interesting fact.